Thanks for having me, everybody. Yeah, and this is a photo of our drilling program last year. You can see that's it's a fantastic place to operate, and there's barely a tree in sight. We're in a Tier 1 jurisdiction to start with. South Australia has all three of Australia's currently operating uranium mines. We're in a world-class district with two producing ISR operations, who I'll talk about, being Beverley and at Honeymoon. We've got highly prospective ground along strike from some of those deposits, over 5,000 square kilometres of highly prospective tenure and 250 kilometres of paleo channels to explore. A highly experienced team. Myself, I'm a geologist by trade, spent 10 years in the uranium business, lived in the US exploring for similar deposits in the previous boom for 6 years, where I assembled a portfolio of about £90 million through successful exploration and acquisitions at that time. So, pretty experienced with these deposits and getting them up. We've had some exploration success last year with our 3 discoveries from step-out drilling around some known prospects. And, we're an active explorer. We're actually currently drilling at the moment out at Uramba, where we're following up on some of those discoveries from our previous program. Just a little bit of a corporate snapshot. We've got a market cap of about 6 million. About 1.8 in the bank. It was 1.1 in the last quarter, but we've since raised about 800 grand as part of a rights issue / placement. And you can see on this chart, it shows a bit of a track of our share price against the uranium price. And we've tracked that uranium price from its highs down to its lows. And you'll see around about April, May, the uranium price started to recover, and we continued down, but we're hoping to close that gap naturally, and with a bit of success around the drill bit in our exploration program. So to the district, there's 2 producing ISR mines in the immediate area. The first one is the Beverley uranium operation. It's got resources there of around about 165 million pounds at high 2,000 ppms. Fantastic deposit. They've been continually producing uranium there for 20 years and produced over 40 million pounds of uranium. Fantastic deposit. And their success has come down to continued success with exploration. When it started, it was just Beverley, and then they had 4 Mile, then 4 Mile West and 4 Mile Northeast. So continued success. Each one of those deposits are very significant in their own right. And then you've got Boss Energy, Australia's most recent uranium producer. They've got about 70 million pounds to the south of us, occurring in 3 separate deposits there. And what have we got? So we've got 5,000 square kilometres that immediately abuts what Boss has got. I'll talk about that a little bit more, and these 250 kilometres of paleo channels. These are our main prospects, which I'll talk about. We've got the Aban deposit, which is an historic resource on it of about 4.6 million pounds. And then the discoveries at Berber are quite close to Aban. And then we've also got Everest and Mount John on the southern part of the tenement, about 60 kilometres south of Oban, and just 17 kilometres north of Honeymoon, that Everest deposit. So this is what Honeymoon looks. As I said, it's just 17 kilometres south of our project. What I like about Honeymoon being so close is it actually can give us a clear pathway to production. If we can make a small discovery, even 5 million pounds at some good grade, then that potentially is commercially viable with the infrastructure that Boss already has in place. If we can be much more successful, which is what we're looking for, 30 million pounds, then we can potentially go our own way. But there's different levels of success at this project due to the existing infrastructure in the area. So that Boss sits in this little red paleo channel that I've highlighted here. So that paleo channel is only 35 kilometres long, and that little bit of paleo channel hosts 50 million pounds of uranium between Boss and the Saffron deposit also. And what have we got? So now you can see that little red paleo channel, step out, and we've got over 250 kilometres of that paleo channel extending both to the north in our property and also to the south at our Lagoon Dam project. So that highly endowed paleo channel just continues onto our property where it is grossly underexplored, and we're very confident that through our exploration programs that there could easily be an economic uranium deposit within those paleo channels. It's just a matter of getting out there, spending the money, doing the exploration, digging in deep and finding that. So just quickly I want to talk about the 3 main deposits. So we've got Berber, sits up there near Aban. We've got Shivers, and then we've got Everest. So they're the three discoveries we made last year. So last year we drilled 123 holes for 12,800 metres. That was 2024 spilled into February 2025 when we finished up. Berber was the first discovery we made, where we stepped out and intersected 1.6 metres at 1,000 ppm, about 1.5 kilometres south of Oban. So that step out drilling was successful. We did a similar thing at Shivers. We stepped out 700 metres in a different direction and intersected half a metre at 1,000 ppm. So early stage hits, but something that we're really excited to follow up on. And then Everest, 60 kilometres to the south, was our third discovery, released in March this year. And that's where we identified mineralisation over 4 kilometres. We only drilled 22 holes, but we're able to define mineralisation over 4 kilometres, and that needs considerably more work just to define that and work out exactly what we've got there. So I want to talk about the Oban deposit first. That's just the logical place to start. That's where there's 4.6 million pounds of uranium already. That's a JORC 2004 resource. We haven't done the work to bring that into compliance with today's JORC code. Most of this work was done, a lot was done in the 70s, but a lot of it was also done in that previous boom, kind of 2007 through to 2012. Hence, it's a JORC 2004 resource. Koba stepped in there last year, drilled quite a few holes. Some of our better hits, 3.9 metres at 805 ppm. So what we did was we confirmed that there's pockets of high-grade mineralisation, good thicknesses, and the resource itself is probably pretty comparable to what we're expecting. Our results are in line with the historic work. So this is a section through some of the historic drilling at Oban, some amazing grade. So the key to Oban is it's got some thickness and some high grade in areas, and what we need to do is step out and see if we can find more of these high grade zones. 2.1 metres at 2,200 ppm is the kind of grade that you can build a mine on. What we need to do is find more of them, make sure it's continuous and big enough to warrant further work and further studies to see if we can get something that can work here. So the way I've been looking to do that is to step out. So from Oban, the first thing we did was step down 1.5 kilometres to Berber, and that's where we had some significant success. So you can see where that sits on this map. And then also the Shivers prospect, which is 700 metres to the east. So we're actually drilling at the moment at Berber, and we're largely targeting the area between Oban itself and Berber. There's a 1.5 kilometre trend there that is very, very sparsely drilled, and the drilling appears to be in the wrong spot from our interpretation and our further work. So we're drilling 3 traverses across that 1.5 kilometre strike to see if we can pick up that uranium mineralisation, and the goal is to connect basically Oban itself with Berber, which would basically double the footprint of the known mineralised area at Oban/Berber. Now at Berber itself, that's where it was discovered in the 90s with some high-grade mineralisation done by Paladin actually, a metre at 860, half a metre at 1,200, so some really good results. But we stepped out over 400 metres to the east and drilled a north-south section, and that's where we intersected a metre at 1.6 metres at 1,000 ppm, which is in itself is an outstanding hit. There's no drilling at all to the east of that, and we're the first people to drill out there that far to the east. So we're pretty excited to discover that, and that's one of the focuses of our current drill program is to see if we can extend that mineralisation and make it more coherent, high grade, thick, and see if we can get it all to hang together and make a real discovery there. And similar thing at Shivers. So at Shivers we stepped out 700 metres and we've hit these 1 metre at 630, still very, very significant, half a metre at 1,000. Again, we're trying to build pounds away from Oban. Oban's there, step down 1.5 kilometres, more pounds, step down to Shivers there, more pounds. So we're trying to build up a size that is warrants further work and studies and all that kind of stuff. So, discovery through step-out exploration is the game. So the current 2,500 metre drill program is underway. As I said, we're going to be following up on those targets I discussed, as you can see on this map. Target 4 is a bit more of a new target, chasing some some historic work. There's some drilling out on Target 4 back in the 1970s with some very significant gamma peaks that haven't been followed up on. So our fourth target is more of a conceptual target. Again, stepping out, trying to find new pounds in new locations to build a sizable portfolio. So our other success, which we announced in March this year, was at Everest. That's where we made another discovery, and just to show you where that is, it's on the southern end of our tenement. So it's actually about 60 kilometres south of Oban, and only about 4 kilometres north of the Jason's deposit, which is 10.7 million pounds at 790 ppm. And it's just pretty much where that highly endowed 35 kilometre stretch of paleo channel that I talked about earlier, when that flows into our property, that's pretty much where Everest sits. And the paleo channel here has got a series of anomalous uranium intercepts over about 15 kilometres. But the success we had was at Everest. And that's where we drilled 22 holes over about 4 kilometres of strike, and were successfully intersecting mineralisation in the majority of those holes. The holes are 100 metres apart, a long section, so they're still quite broadly spaced. So there's opportunity for higher grade infill, but also the closest section we drilled was 400 metres apart. So north-south direction, they're 400 to 600 metres apart, and then right up at the north, it was a 2 kilometre step out that we had. So there's so much room within this 4 kilometre trend that we've only put 22 holes into to define thicker, higher grade, more continuous mineralisation, and that's one of our priority drill targets for our forward work program. As you can see, we were able to get high grade mineralisation. There's 3 of the holes on this section here you can see had greater than 1,000 ppm over 0.3 to 0.4 metres. So for us, it's a really good sign. And you'll see on this section here that the mineralisation actually hangs together quite nicely. Although it's a touch thin, you can see that it's the same level all the time. It's very consistent. This section's over 2.1 kilometres, so it's hanging together. So we're optimistic that means that it's going to be reasonably coherent. And as we continue to infill drill and extend the drill, we will be able to chase that mineralisation. And what we need to find is the pockets where the grade increases. And that's normally related to geological environments, looking for some carbonaceous material, some bends in channels, and all these little good things that help concentrate uranium mineralisation. We know the uranium mineralisation's there, we know it's moving through, it's just a matter of finding that economic concentration. And after that, so we've talked about Berber, Shivers and Everest, but we've got 5,000 square kilometres of tenure. That's enormous. It's 120 kilometres from the southern end of our tenements to the northern tenement, and 40 kilometres wide. And there's numerous prospects that were identified during the 70s and again during the 2000s that warrant follow-up. Uramba North, 2 metres at 530 ppm, very, very little follow-up. Bingley, 1 metre at 225 ppm, discovered in the 70s, almost no follow-up. There's resorts like Bingley North, that has never had a modern hole in it. We don't even know what the grade is there because the old information's just got gamma logs, but they're 20 times background in their gamma logs. So, a real strong portfolio of projects to follow up. As I said, an experienced board, experienced geologist myself. As a disclaimer, and my contact details, if anyone wants to speak to me, I'll be out the front and anyone can come and have a chat at any time. But to summarise quickly, great jurisdiction, South Australia, great district, 2 producing ISR operations, active explorer, highly prospective ground, and should have some pretty good news flow with our current drill program going on. Some of the most prospective ground in the country for uranium mineralisation. Thank you.